Hello everyone, we were discussing about the atomic structure. Today, continuing with that, we will study about electronic configuration or how are electrons arranged in an atom. Electronic configuration. Sodium, you all know that 2311. I gave you this formula where X stands for any element, A is the mass number and Z is the atomic number. So mass number of sodium is 23 and atomic number of sodium is 11. We just need the atomic number here in this case. Now atomic number is 11. I have already told you atomic number is the number of protons in an atom. That means if atomic number is 11, number of protons is also 11. And I have also told you the number of protons is always equal to the number of electrons. So number of electrons is also equal to 11. So if atomic number is 11, number of protons is also 11 and number of electrons is 11. And of course, number of neutrons is equal to mass number minus the number of protons, that is 11. So 23 minus 11 will give you 12. So number of neutrons is 12. But since we are doing more electronic configuration, I just need this. Now number of electrons are 11. Now electrons are not randomly arranged in an atom. They follow a certain pattern. So we know the nucleus is there, protons and neutrons, 11 protons and 12 neutrons. Now the first orbit. The first orbit can hold only 2 electrons, maximum 2 electrons, not more than that. So 1, 2. How many electrons did we have? 11. So in first orbit, how many? 2. Now how many left? 9 left. Now in the second orbit. The second orbit can hold maximum of 8 electrons. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, 9, 10. So how many electrons left? Now only 1 electron is left. So third orbit. Now the third orbit also can hold a maximum of 8 electrons. But only how many electrons are left now? Only 1. So how are the electrons arranged in sodium? First orbit 2, second orbit 8 and the last orbit 1. Now see, you cannot jump. You can't just fill in 1 electron in the first orbit and then jump to the next orbit. Okay? So first you have to fill in the first orbit. And I told you the first orbit can hold maximum of 2 electrons. So first you will put 2 in the first orbit, then you go to the next orbit. Next orbit also you have to fill in first. So how many electrons maximum in the second? 8. So first you fill in 8 electrons. If there is any remaining electrons, then you move to the third orbit. You can't put in 1 here, 6 here and jump off to the third orbit. Okay? So first fill in the first orbit with 2 electrons. Then go to the second orbit. It can hold maximum of 8 electrons. So suppose in case of oxygen, you have only 8 electrons. Okay? So you may get confused here. So I'm doing oxygen. Oxygen atomic number is 8. That means number of electrons is also 8. Okay? So the nucleus, we have the protons and the neutrons. the 8, and I told you first orbit 2. Now how many left? 8 minus 2, 6. Now I'll go to the second orbit and fill in the remaining 6 electrons. See, in some cases it may not be 8. So it can be less than 8 but not more than 8. So first you have to fill in the first orbit, then only go to the second orbit, fill in the second orbit with 8 electrons. If there is any remaining, then you move on to the third orbit. Okay, so first orbit maximum 2 electrons, second orbit maximum of 8 electrons, and then so on. That means even in the third orbit you will have 8 electrons, fourth orbit also maximum 8 electrons. So from the second orbit onwards, the maximum number of electrons will be 8. Now theoretically we follow this formula, 2n square, where n stands for the number of orbit. So 2 into, suppose it is the first orbit, so how many electrons? 2. 2 into the second orbit, 8. 18. Now see, theoretically the third orbit is supposed to have 18 electrons. But when we do it in our exercise book, or when we do it practically, we take only a maximum of 8 electrons after the second orbit. So only the first orbit will have maximum of 2 electrons, and after that maximum of 8 electrons. You cannot jump from one orbit to the second orbit, or from the second orbit to the third orbit without filling the first one, without filling the second one. So without filling the first, you can't go to second. Without filling the second, you can't go to the third orbit. So I will give you some exercise. So try it out and then we will continue with this. Thank you. Bye-bye.